another episode of the Motley Stew Show, where I go over the past week and look at what interesting things have floated to the top. And this week is going to be a little bit different. Leading up to this week, you know I mentioned the midterms a number of times. And that actually was the biggest story this week, and there's a lot of things packed in there that are worth talking about. That also leads to there is going to be a change in the format of the show coming in the next few weeks. This is stemming from an idea that most of the people that I look at and that I look up to in terms of YouTubers, people like Phil DeFranco and Grace Helbig and the Vlog Brothers and those guys, and I look at what they do and I look at what they talk about, and a lot of times they talk about if you want to do well at YouTube, it's not about trying to look for followers, it's not about trying to chase trends, it's really about just talking about what you're passionate about. Now for me, I happen to be passionate about a number of things, so that can be a little bit of a broad topic. But I looked out into the YouTube verse. One thing I found kind of missing was kind of open political dialogue, political discussion about digging into things that are happening in politics and how they actually interact with your daily life. Because some of them can seem very esoteric and sort of vague and sort of just so big but yet so disconnected from what we deal with every day. But really, some of these things have ripple effects that come right down into your neighborhood. And so they're important to look at. I also believe that it's just important for all of us to be involved. I mean, I think that's the whole point of our democratic system, is for us to be involved in the system so that we all make our voices heard. So you can keep your eye out in the next few weeks for a little bit of a change in the format of the show. And, I hope you still watch. I hope you enjoy. I'm still hoping to make it funny, interesting, captivating, and worth something that you can leave comments about, something that you can start discussions about. So this is actually going to be a one-course meal episode, a politics wrap sandwich. And we're going to go over the nuggets and the little tidbits that were left over from November 4th, last Tuesday. I'm not going to go over every race because that would take forever. I'm just going to kind of pinpoint some of the things that I think they're important to look at, some of the things that stood out for me in the results of that night. In regards to last Tuesday, here are some of the important things. The Tea Party lost big. Now you might go look at the map and you might see all the results and see the red splashed all over the place, where Republicans took Senate seats, where they took some more governor's houses, but they also lost a couple. But you might look and say, wow, the Republicans won big. How could you say the Tea Party lost? Because the Tea Party is under the Republican umbrella. But the Tea Party over the last 2 years has been trying very hard to actually distance itself from the Republican brand. They kind of want to be their own separate brand. They are a new type of Republican. They're willing to sacrifice all the establishment candidates to get their own candidates in place because they think that that's what the country wants. But leading up to the 2014 midterms, the primary season for all the establishment Republicans, there were tons of Tea Party challengers left and right all across the country. Almost every single one lost. No Tea Party person, except for maybe one or two in certain circumstances, made it past the establishment candidate. The establishment candidate was able to knock them off in the primary. Now, what the Tea Party really wanted to see this time around was they wanted to see the GOP lose seats. Either lose completely, or at least not make it to the number of seats, which was 6, that they needed to get to take over the Senate. If they had failed to take over the Senate, the Tea Party would have had this rallying cry to say, look, you failed to do something you should have been able to do. The map was stacked in your favor. The Democrats had to hold on to 13 seats. Republicans only had to hold on to 3. Should have been easy to take those seats in such an anti-incumbent wave. But yet the Republicans, if they had failed, the Tea Party would have used this to booster themselves and say, that's right, if our candidates were there, we would have won. Now that's impossible to say for sure that they would have won, but at least they could claim that. But it didn't happen that way. Republicans ran the board. They took pretty much every Senate seat that they were looking to take. They got 7, just 1 over the 6 that they needed, so they took control of the Senate, and the establishment basically won big. They get to look back down at the Tea Party folks and say, look, we made it happen. Not you, we did it. So now the GOP big money establishment folks can boast on this victory and maybe keep the wild-eyed fringe part of their party a little quieter between now and 2016. Now the Tea Party didn't have all losses though. There was one senator and a couple congressmen that did get in under that kind of Tea Party brand. In Iowa, that person is Joni Ernst. You might not know who she is now. In my opinion, she's going to fit right in with Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, and she'll kind of be taking up that Michelle Bachmann fringe voice, except now in the Senate instead of where Bachmann was in the House. Now for Iowa, this is actually the first woman that they've ever sent to the Senate. And that's great. That's an awesome achievement, but not quite the step forward you might think for, say, women's rights or the things that a lot of the women in the country actually vote for. Ernst, while she was in the Iowa State House, actually co-sponsored a personhood bill. If you don't know what the personhood bills are, these have been tried throughout the country a number of times over the last handful of years. They have always failed. The idea of personhood is saying that a fetus is a legal person from the moment of conception. And so with that idea, that means all legal rights that we have would be transferred to an unborn child upon the moment of conception. So, that being said, abortion is murder at that point. Abortion would be outlawed in every case. No rape, no incest, no life of the mother. All of that is gone. So abortion is completely wiped off. On top of that, personhood bills also ban many popular forms of birth control because the people sponsoring these don't understand science, and they think that a number of these birth control methods are actually abortifacients, which actually just eject already fertilized eggs. Not true, but that doesn't matter. So you would see a lot of those birth control methods leave the market under these rules. Now, while Ernst co-sponsored that bill in Iowa, it didn't get through, and we're going to go back to personhood later on in the episode. So keep your eye out for that. Ernst also campaigned on the idea of repealing Obamacare, which, let's face it, this was voted on over 40 different times throughout the last Congress, never passed, and it never will. Even the Republicans are starting to talk about not repealing Obamacare, but maybe trying to chip away at it a little bit, because they know they're not going to get it off the table. They also know that millions upon millions of people now have insurance that didn't before. So if they take that away, it's bad press. That's hugely bad PR for those people, because now they have to struggle to find health insurance again. No matter what, in 2 years, they don't want to be wiped out by the idea that they took down the healthcare initiative from Obama. Now, if that isn't enough that she wants to take down, she also campaigned on the idea that she wants to destroy and take apart the IRS, the EPA, and the Department of Education, because she feels that all of those things should be left to the states or not done at all. Now, this is a really popular thing, again, with the Tea Party brands, to just go after the government and say the government is too big and we need to just destroy other departments. Anything that they feel they don't like. They don't like being taxed, get rid of it. They don't like people coming in and saying that the schools have to have certain standards, get rid of it. They don't like having a group coming in and telling you that your companies can't spill pollutants into your local water supply, get rid of it. Again, none of this stuff is ever going to pass. None of this stuff has any realistic chance of doing anything. But yet the people who vote for her thought she had a shot at it. So now she's going to the Senate. We'll see how long she lasts there. Or if she changes her tune once she gets there. In Colorado, they just elected to the state house a guy named Gordon Klingenschmidt. I hope I pronounced that right. This guy is as far to the right as you could possibly go, and not only that, most likely a little deranged. And I'm not trying to be flippant about this. This is a man who performed a virtual exorcism on President Obama in video form because he believed that Obama was possessed by demonic spirits. Because how else would he choose to do the things that he's doing? Obviously, it must be Satan. Gordon is also virulently anti-gay, and he thinks the entire country should be run by Christian values alone. Even the Republican Party in Colorado, the chair of that party, wants to have nothing to do with him. He made a comment during the primary season saying that Klingenschmidt does not represent Republican values in Colorado. Now, I don't know how bad you have to be to get your own Republican Party to disavow themselves of you, but now I wonder what they're going to do that now that he won, now that he is actually in the state house as a Republican. But if you follow politics at all on a national scale, you can bet you're going to be hearing about this guy again. Then in Wisconsin, we have Scott Walker, the embattled governor who almost was run out of office twice now. He made it through, and he didn't just make it through by a little bit. He made it through by a healthy margin, which is good for the idea that he still thinks he's going to run for president. So if he had just squeaked through, you could pretty much kiss the presidential idea goodbye. But he made it through healthy. Will he run for president? Probably. In terms of conservative viewpoints and conservative practices, he's got the cred. He's got the street cred. He can be someone who comes out and says, I stood up to the left. I stood up to the unions, and I won time and time again. And he's a red governor in a very blue state. So what might be his negatives if he runs for president? Walker's a terrible public speaker. Getting into the debates, getting into actually national television where he has to deliver address after address after address, it's not going to work. Somewhere in there, he will stumble. and he will get outplayed by people who are used to doing those debates, people who are much more elegant at talking. So congratulations to him for winning, his governor's house again. He should enjoy it while it lasts, because I think he's going to term out now. Now, all those things being said, for the folks on the left side of the aisle, for the Democrats around here, it might have been a very hard night for you. In fact, it was a very hard night for you. It looked like blood spilled all over the map. It wasn't a total loss. There are certain things that you need to look at that you can actually see some bright spots, not necessarily for Democrats per se, but for Democratic principles, for things that they usually vote for. Now, in California, a ballot measure was passed to actually lower the sentencing for certain low-level felony crimes down to misdemeanors. That's actually going to immediately relieve some of the massive stress on our prison system, because it's filled with people who are picked up on incredibly low drug charges, like carrying a little bit of marijuana, or even carrying a little bit of cocaine. These are people who have no violent crimes in their record, they're not in there currently for rape or any sexual assault, and they don't have any gun or weapons crimes. So those things all come into play. Now all those cases are going to go back to a judge who's going to review them and decide whether or not the people have either served enough of the time on a misdemeanor, or they're just going to reduce their time and then let them out. And like I said, anyone with violent crime on their record doesn't get out. So the people who are saying that thugs are just going to be running the streets now and there's going to be massive rape and murder and chaos, that's just scare tactics. There were personhood measures in 2 different states. One of them was in Colorado, which has actually been brought up 3 times. Now, like I said, Joni Ernst is a fan of these, but they have never done well. They've never been passed anywhere, and this year, same thing happened. Didn't get passed. They got voted down by double digits, sometimes one of them by 30 points. These are such extreme measures from the anti-abortion crowd. They're never going to make it, but they still keep going to the ballot every year, time and time again. Now in Alabama, they actually did their constitutional duty and decided to pass a ballot measure where they voted against foreign law, because somehow they were magically thinking that our court system was suddenly going to pick up Sharia law, or maybe they were going to pick up the house rules from Slytherin. I don't know, but they now put it on the books that they can't do it. Along with that, Alabama actually passed a minimum wage upgrade, and that was actually passed in a number of states. So fans of a minimum wage increase won big on Tuesday. Beyond Alabama, we saw that pass in Alaska, Arkansas, South Dakota, and Nebraska. So all those people now, their minimum wage has been raised up. It's all to different amounts, but still, it's been a lift. And in Washington state, on the ballot there was a gun control measure. The most popular gun control measure around the country when it was being proposed on a federal level, which was just saying background checks for all gun sales. That's it. Nothing else. No other crazy, anti-gun law. It just says background checks for everybody. Every gun sale, gun show, private sales. So while the voters of Washington actually got that passed, they were also smart enough to see that another measure on that ballot completely contradicted that gun control law, and was actually posed by people who didn't want the gun control bill to go through. So the voters caught that trick, and they voted that one down. So the gun control law stands, the trick failed, and now everyone in Washington has background checks. Like I said, Democrats lost big in terms of Senate seats and houses around the country, but the map was totally stacked against them. They had a lot to defend. They had a lot of territory to cover. But that only is going to last for 2 years. GOP needs to remember that in 2 years, in 2016, when the electorate, the people who actually come out and vote, much more favors the Democrats, in 2016, the map is heavily stacked against the Republicans. They will have a ton more seats to defend. The Democrats will have very few. And it is very likely at this moment, many of the political pundits already say, very likely that the pendulum is going to swing right back. The blue side will wipe its way in and probably take over the Senate again, maybe not the House. Now that being said, there is a way for the GOP to hold on to their victories. They can hold on to the Senate and the House, even if they lose in 2016 to, Hillary Clinton when she decides to finally announce that she's going to run for president. The way that they can hold on is by actually doing some work, do some governing. If they decide to spend the next 2 years just blocking everything Obama wanted to do, which isn't that much different from the last 2 years, then they're going to get labeled the do-nothing Congress. The last 2 Congresses have actually historically been the worst, the least productive Congresses in history. They've passed the fewest bills, they've amended the fewest things, they've basically done nothing but stop the president from getting what he wanted to get done. that isn't something you can run on, that isn't something you can praise, and that isn't something that you can say, vote for me again, I will continue to do nothing. So in the next 2 years, John Boehner, who's the leader of the House still, and Mitch McConnell, who is now the majority leader in the Senate, are going to have to make their caucuses agree to do something. And to get that done likely means compromise with the Democrats. Otherwise, the Democrats are just going to put their foot down and try to do the same thing, try to make the Republicans look like they can't get anything done. So the Republicans are in far more danger of not only losing the Senate again in 2016, but losing the House and letting Hillary Clinton walk in like Obama did. So Boehner, McConnell, I don't envy you. I don't envy you trying to work with the Tea Party fringe in your caucus. But somehow you got to figure out a way to do it. That's this week. Those are the midterms. If you think I actually missed on something important that happened, let me know. Tell me what you think was important on November 4th in the results. So thanks for watching. And as always, one thing that won't change, here's a little bit of Logan.
I'm a crazy child. Logan, was that fun?
Along with that, Alabama actually passed a minimum wage upgrade. And that was actually passed in a number of states. So fans of a minimum wage increase won big on Tuesday.